So who is green then? There are many segmentations of the consumer audience available globally, some better than others. All follow a similar path in terms of about a third of them being engaged with sustainability, the greener end of the spectrum. So we can say that's the top three categories you can see here. One third of them sit in the disengaged end, so that's the inactives and non-carers you can see at the bottom of the chart. And then a third sit in the middle, roughly, swung either way depending on their circumstances, price, time, effort, all of those sorts of things. After a literary review globally of the different segmentations, the research behind them, as well as our own research and overlaying that with a lot of UK data, we've produced a segmentation that we believe is tailored to the UK market specifically, but has lots of general principles outside of that. We like it because what we've been able to do is to break out the rough proportions of the market into general categories with several of what we call motivational subsegments. There are several reasons that anyone is in a general segment. For instance, the inactive section that you can see towards the bottom of the chart being formed of different motivational groups inhibited towards sustainability because of, for instance, they just actually don't believe that the problem's out there, the climate's not changing, we can cope with the waste that we've got. Or for instance, to the right of that, those people that are leaving it to technology. Technology is improving all the time, they think that technology is going to solve the issue. Or potentially even worse, to the right of that, those that just feel helpless. They might actually think that there's a problem out there, something needs to be done, but personally they just don't feel that they can do anything themselves. Going through all of the different motivational subsegments in any detail would actually be the subject of a separate webinar in itself. But I think what is important to take out from this, different groups have different worldviews, how globally or locally that actually resonates to them. They've got different priorities, values, different levels of trust in organisations, in their communications. They have different motivators and different behaviours. They also the groups are exclusive and require different treatments for maximum success. What works across healthy greens, for instance, isn't going to necessarily work across the uninformed group. So we need to make sure that we're tailoring our messages and we're actually looking at the makeup of our audience, whatever group of stakeholders that may be, and making sure that we're trying to break those messages out where possible and draw these considerations in. They also have different levels of price sensitivity. As we mentioned earlier, anyone's likely to switch. It just depends on the cost. That's going to be lesser at the green leaders end, for instance, than it might be at people like the when it suits end of the segmentation. So if we take one example pen portrait a little bit further, so this is the green leaders portion of the demographic, which has about 5% of the overall total. The green leaders are those at the higher end of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, with deeply entrenched personal views. What's more, that many of the segments have the maturity, passion, desire to search for the information and the intelligence to actively influence their significant others in these matter, forming norms and changing behaviours in the marketplace and within stakeholder groups on a much wider scale. That's why for some products, such as health food, for example, it's sometimes best to start with these individuals and work gradually into the mass market as things become proven at the greener end and the influence is spread through things like word of mouth. One more detailed motivational subsegment of the green leader sort of category is the healthy green subsegment, motivated by the health for their family, prompted by buying specific groups of food, for instance, organics, keeping away from anything perceived as risky, so for example genetically modified or products that contain certain chemicals. Often we can see that the demographics of these individuals will be mid-40s females from the highest socio-economic groups, all having or previously had good jobs, good professional jobs with older children. By understanding segments at this sort of level and then really getting into the demographics behind those into a lot more detail, which does exist, we can identify the groups within the organisational stakeholder groups that we need to approach, how to approach them, how to communicate best with them. We can understand that the media they generally consume, apply the data to understanding them, but also apply it to things like marketing lists and advertising to target them effectively. We can increase the relevance of our message and therefore our response rates and ROI. So it's useful to have these consumer segmentations, but what there is for consumers particularly of all the segments is a lot more information in the marketplace generally about them. However, many of the sales that are actually made in the marketplace, as many of us know, is in B2B marketing, business-to-business context. Therefore, we've done a piece of research that started to devise what this segmentation looks like for organisations by applying multiple variables to determine the efforts of the large sample of organisations in sustainability compared to a subjective analysis of the extent they're actually promoting on this basis. By bringing these two pieces together, we can see clearly formed segments determine what we believe is where organisations sit in terms of their worldview. So obviously organisations are made up of sometimes hundreds of thousands of people, of varying individuals. So the culture will not necessarily resonate with all of their worldviews. So this is something that we'll actually cover shortly. Most of the segments you can see are fairly self-explanatory, and they do have parallels to the segmentation that we looked at just a couple of minutes ago. However, one that is less self-explanatory is the traditional green in the top left. Our analysis identifies that there are a number of organisations and industry sectors out there which by default have lower impacts, and however they will not necessarily promote this to the same level as other organisations that are trying to differentiate themselves in this area, because these issues have always just been inherent to their sector and how they actually operate their business. Like consumers, by building profiles around the segments, we can target them and identify them at a number of different levels. But it's not enough to just focus on our customers, whether they're businesses or consumers. With the information intensity, varying agendas, influence of third parties within the green marketing and sustainability area, there's both a need and many benefits to engaging stakeholders more holistically and addressing each of their specific requirements. Some of these stakeholder groups can be seen here. So we mentioned culture earlier. What happens when people come to work? So these different individuals with different worldviews within organisations with different cultures. We've developed a stakeholder segmentation model, particularly with employees in mind, to take the business consumer and business to business segmentations one step further, exploring what happens when you put different types of individuals in different types of organisations, determined by their outlook towards sustainability primarily. Unlike the other couple of segmentations that we've looked at today, this is more hypothesis than grounded in thorough research, although we think that this has got a lot of practical applications and we're looking to take this one step further. So let us know if there's any potential partners out there that would like to try developing this further with us. The basic premise is that a company's culture can have a suppressing or multiplying effect on the individual's influence. So for instance, if you put a green individual in a green organisation, you have someone that's bought in, empowered and highly productive. If this same person was in an organisation that they felt did not value corporate responsibility, they're likely to be frustrated and try to change it as what we term a tempered radical. A person that does not value sustainability in an organisation that does is likely to be sceptical of the work of that organisation, potentially thinking that they're greenwashing and not have a good cultural fit. This same person in an organisation that doesn't value sustainability either is what we term a risky brown, as sustainability is playing little part in decisions apart from making sure that it's covered at a regulatory level and financially.